Hello and welcome! Today, we're going to dive into a really cool technique that lets scientists peek inside materials to understand their hidden electrical properties. It's called electrical impedance spectroscopy, or just EIS for short. But before we get into the weeds, let me ask you something. When you look at an object, any material, how do you really, truly get what it's all about? I mean, just looking at it from the outside, well, that barely scratches the surface, right? You need a way to see what's really going on inside. And that's exactly why we need what we call a holistic approach. To really understand a material, to get its complete story, scientists have to look at it from all sorts of angles. It's about building a full profile, not just taking a single, simple snapshot. Now, this profile usually has three main parts. First up, you've got its chemical makeup, what atoms and molecules is it made of. Then there's its microscopic structure. How are all those bits and pieces arranged? And finally, the part we're interested in today, its electrical behavior. How does it react when you zap it with a little electricity? You really need all three to get the full picture. So how in the world do we investigate that third piece of the puzzle, the electrical side of things? Well, that brings us to the star of our show today, electrical impedance spectroscopy. You can think of it like a super specialized electrical detective designed to figure out exactly how a material responds to current. So what is EIS really? At its heart, it's a super clever, non-destructive technique. It measures how much a material fights against the flow of electrical current. But here's the key. It doesn't just do this once. It measures this opposition across a whole bunch of different frequencies. This whole process gives us a unique electrical profile, kind of like a fingerprint for the material, all without ever damaging it. So, you might be asking, why is EIS such a popular method? Well, for one, it's relatively cheap compared to other heavy-duty techniques. It also uses tiny little electrical signals, so it doesn't mess with the thing you're trying to study. It's also fantastic for looking at what's called an interface, that really important boundary where two different materials meet. And because it's a time-dependent study, you can actually watch how a material's properties change over time. Now, I've said a couple of times that EIS measures impedance, but what exactly is that? Most of us have heard of resistance, but impedance is, well, it's a much bigger, more dynamic idea. Let's break it down. Okay, so here's the main difference. Resistance is pretty straightforward. It's the opposition to a steady, direct current, or DC. Think of it like a simple wall. Impedance, on the other hand, is the opposition to an alternating current, AC, one that's constantly switching directions. And because of that, impedance isn't just one static number. It actually changes depending on the frequency of that current. It's less like a fixed wall and way more like a dynamic obstacle course that changes depending on how fast you try to run through it. In fact, impedance is way more comprehensive. It's really a combination of three things: good old resistance, plus capacitance, which is the ability to store charge like a tiny battery, and inductance, which has to do with magnetic fields. The whole shebang gives us a much, much richer understanding of the material. Okay, so we know what impedance is, but how does the test actually work? You might be surprised, but the basic idea is actually pretty simple. It's all about sending a signal in and then listening really carefully to what comes back out. It happens in three basic steps. First, we apply a small known electrical signal to our sample. Step 2, the system measures the output signal to see how the material changed it. Did it get smaller? Did it get delayed? Then, step 3, and this is the magic part, we do it all over again, but at a different frequency. And we keep repeating this, sweeping across a huge range of frequencies from super low to super high. Now, as powerful as this technique is, it's not without its challenges. The biggest one is that it's super sensitive to things like temperature and other environmental conditions. Just a small change in the room's temperature, for instance, can totally alter a material's impedance reading. So because of that sensitivity, getting a clean, clear signal is absolutely crucial. Scientists have to do these really careful calibration steps before they even start a test. This is all about getting rid of any electrical noise from the equipment itself, just to make sure that the signal they end up measuring is coming purely from the material and nothing else. All right, so we've run our tests, we've calibrated everything perfectly. Now what? What do we actually get at the end of all this, and what does it tell us? This is where we turn all those electrical signals into some real practical insights. The final result is a graph, that electrical profile or fingerprint we were talking about earlier. This plot shows us exactly how the material's impedance changes as the signal's frequency goes up or down. A lot of the time, this shows up as a really distinct curve. this sort of exponential decay that is unique to that material under those conditions. And you can actually break this graph down into different regions where each part tells a different story. For example, if you're analyzing a battery, the data you get at really low frequencies might tell you about chemical reactions happening on the surface of the electrodes, while the high-frequency data can tell you about the simple resistance of the electrolyte inside. It's packed with information. And trust me, this is not just some abstract lab experiment. EIS is used all over the place. It can be used to check if food is fresh, to inspect the quality of a coat of paint, or to spot corrosion long before you can see it with your own eyes. It's absolutely fundamental for developing better batteries and is even used to study biological tissues. The applications are just incredible. So, electrical impedance spectroscopy gives us this amazing lens to see the invisible electrical world humming away inside all sorts of materials. It's a great reminder that there's almost always more going on than what we can see. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. What other hidden properties of the world all around us are just waiting for the right tool to come along and reveal them?